Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, the home for the human conversation.
Hello and welcome back to the second panel of Insight Jam Live 2025, our 7th annual discussion about enterprise tech and AI. I'm excited to bring in our next group of panelists as they discuss rethinking assessment, measuring human intelligence when AI answers are everywhere. Lindy, Bhavani, David, Jeffrey, and Michelle, welcome one and all. It is a pleasure to have you here with me. I'm looking forward to this discussion. I know it's going to be a great one. Lindy, you've graciously agreed to moderate, so I'll let you kick things off with our first introduction.
Absolutely. My name is Lindy Hockenberry. I am a K-12 EdTech advisor and strategist. So I work pretty much solely K-12. One of my favorite topics to talk about is redesigning assessment because I help K-12 educators unpack the effects of emerging technologies like AI on their curriculum and instruction.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Bhavani, over to you next.
My name is Bhavani Kola. I'm a passionate educator. I teach mathematics. I am a CEO and founder of Eclatech Solutions, where AI literacy has been our mission. And we train educators, we train corporates, and just reducing the AI gap is my top one priority.
Well, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show. Next, let's go over to David.
Hi, I'm David Hendravirawan. I'm an advisor at Informatica, where we help our customers with change management, AI literacy, and data governance. And I work with professional societies such as Data Management Association, ISACA, and others to proliferate AI literacy with our professional community. I also teach part-time at the University of Texas.
Thank you for being here, David. Welcome to the show. Jeffrey, let's get your intro next.
Hey, Jeffrey Schaefer here. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm the director of the Applied AI Lab and Perry Professor of Analytics at the University of Cincinnati. I teach AI courses, Gen AI workshops, and courses for our students' governance of AI systems. And prior to that, I spent about 30 years in the private sector, financial services, ran a fintech, and built and deployed and monetized AI algorithms. So, yeah. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And last but not least, returning to the show, Michelle, welcome.
Hi, Michelle Muncy Silva. I have 30 plus years in education and have been working for over a decade with adult learners and education teams. And now as the executive director of She Leads AI Academy, we're leading women towards increasing their active participation with generative AI.
Awesome. Well, thank you one and all for being here. I'm looking forward to this discussion, but since I'm not qualified to lead it, I'm going to hand things over to Lindy to begin with our first question. And good luck.
Great. So we've been in a place for a while where somebody can Google a question and get an answer. That answer was traceable, though, and you could find the source of it and say, hey, has plagiarism occurred or not? With generative AI, specifically large language models, we can't really do that anymore. So how do we measure understanding in this world where anyone can summon an almost perfect answer instantly? I'm curious about the higher ed perspective. So let's start with Bhavani.
With 25 years of experience in teaching and not having any options of how AI is evolving, my mindset has been I need to pivot from assessing artifacts to assessing the cognitive process. And this realignment actually reflects more authentic educational goals. I teach math and I've implemented discussion journals where students articulate why they selected a particular problem-solving technique, what alternative methods do they have. This is actually giving them insights of their cognitive skills and also requires some kind of profound diagnostics that will actually help me diagnose the knowledge and the skills towards the problem.
Great. Jeffrey, I know you're coming from the higher ed perspective as well. Anything to add there?
I agree with her. I think, if I think through, I kind of divide them into sort of the technical skills versus these other skills. And I think in the world of AI, the technical skills are going to be less important. Learning to teach, students how to code, for example. It's an important skill, but it's going to become less and less important as AI does it. It's going to be more important for the student to understand why we're coding in the first place. What is the objective of it, right? And so I think shifting the cognitive, I think, is spot on. But to assess it, I think the shift is to look at the deliverable, right? And say, what are we trying to solve? Like, start with the business problem as opposed to starting with the technology. Are we solving a real business problem? And then as we get to it, how did you solve it? And what are the risks? And what were the decision points along the way? Because it's like you said, real easy to put in the question and get an answer. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't get you all the way there.
Absolutely. David, I know you're coming from both higher ed as well as some industry perspective. Anything to add?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that Bhavani and Jeffrey have just mentioned. So the only thing I could probably add is a real example. We just finished our finals late last week, where essentially instead of doing multiple choice, instead of doing even short questions, I asked the students to do oral presentation without notes, without computer. And, there are 30 questions, and I told them you have to study for all of them, but I will randomly assign 5 questions. So we have 35 students in the class, and within 120 minutes, we have to be able to get every single one of them to answer questions. So divide them into groups, arrange it in such a way that it becomes like an interview. The nice thing about AI is that when they record their conversations, just like we typically do with our meetings, we can get the transcripts, and I can use prompt engineering and develop my own AI grader to help evaluate the critical thinking skills exhibited by each of the students through that transcript. So it doesn't replace the grading process. I still do the grading, but I leverage AI to evaluate and define the rubrics and the criteria. And so it's completely a different way of testing people. It keeps them on their feet because they have to answer it impromptu. And from the feedback I get from the students, interestingly, they said that it's more stressful, but it's also more satisfying. They felt that they're actually trying to do something that will be exhibiting what happens in the real world.
I love that. Michelle, I selfishly left you to the last question because you have K-12 experience like me, but also adult ed experience. Anything you would add from those perspectives?
Oh, definitely. I want to echo David and just say that those experiences that require real human judgment in the moment are vital. I think internships, apprenticeships, mentored project work is really the direction that we need to head. I think we're going to be turning theory into action to demonstrate understanding. I think nuance, ethics, decision-making are naturally going to emerge if we create those conditions as they've described. I think when a learner has to navigate a situation, interpret human needs, collaborate with someone else, or present their reasoning out loud, as in that example, AI cannot stand in for that. And that's one of the reasons within the She Leads AI Academy, we prioritize internship for our adult learners. Participants are going to have to teach to an international audience. And it's revealed through that experience, right? How do they adapt to a confused learner? How do they guide without taking over? How do they handle ambiguity? How do they reflect? I think assessment's going to shift to be more rooted in project development, mentorship, oral defense, as you just brought up. I think that's going to give us something far more telling than a correct answer. It's going to show us how somebody's thinking, what they value, how they respond under pressure, whether they can integrate knowledge into judgment. I think these distinct human qualities are elements that can't be automated. And that's what I think could really anchor next gen assessments.
I like to piggyback on what Michelle has just said, especially in the education world. The discriminant part is central here. We need to design assessments where students can evaluate the AI output and tell me what's wrong, what's misleading, and what would students adapt to change something. And these skills are necessary because we are in turn teaching our students when to trust AI and what questions to ask. And with this said, when they know that educators are going to ask such questions, the whole paradigm of learning changes.
I love all of that. What I'm hearing is, and this has really been a focus of the discussion in the K-12 world, is we need to shift from a focus on products to the process of learning and documenting that process of learning. I loved the examples that you were giving, Michelle, of what does this actually look like? Internships, for example. Let's build on that. What new forms of assessment can reveal the judgment, the nuance, the moral reasoning behind the human brain, those things that AI can't fake? Bhavani, why don't you pick us back up since you left off the last question?
So I give decision journals in my classes. I teach mathematics. And for me, what's important is I teach nursing students. I teach engineering students. There is a whole wide range of students that I teach. Every class, every semester, when I take evaluation, I have at least 19 different frameworks and 19 different backgrounds my students are coming. So when I teach pre-calculus, are you able to do this problem with this formula? Yes, everybody is able to. But can you take this beyond classroom? Can you extrapolate this to circumstances that I have never mentioned? That transferability, what matters to me. And I think that's what the workforce is looking right now. Nobody cares what grade they got in pre-calculus, but are they able to take those reasoning powers beyond their classroom and apply to the real world is what is important.
Great. Jeff, anything to add to that, like specific examples of how you're assessing student learning in your courses?
Well, I'm gonna shout out to I'm gonna call it experiential learning, right? And that's what they're talking about here. In 1906, shout out to UC, we invented the co-op. We were the first co-op, and we invented it, and now we are a universal co-op program. So that's how much we lean into it here. I don't think there's anything more valuable than that. That's real world experience where students are going out into companies. The companies get to meet the students get to interact with those, and the skills that we're talking about beyond the ones that were mentioned, presentation, collaboration, problem solving, those things that are the water heater talk that everybody talks about, right? Like getting into a company and understanding how they work, what they do, what their problems are. You can't emulate that in a classroom. You certainly can't emulate it with AI. So I think that's the number one thing. And then when it goes to the assessment, I think exactly what we talked about is flipping the switch. We mentioned going from multiple choice to these verbal assessments. I think it's just a better way to learn, right? I mean, if you ask a question on a test and it's multiple choice, I can guess at that. AI has a great shot at answering that question. But if I have to demonstrate it in a conversation as if I were talking to an executive or a manager or a coworker, that's something completely different. And I think that's the skills we need to focus on in this age.
I love that. So I'm hearing experiential learning, apprenticeships, decision logs. Who gave the example of a decision log? Was that Bhavani? Is that what you called it?
Decision journals, yeah.
Decision journal, that's right. I like that. I like that a lot. I, for the K-12 perspective, have developed a framework. I call it the assessment puzzle framework. And the idea is we have all these different pieces of puzzles that are different types of multimedia or things like collaborations with AI, personal elements, adding current events. But the one big thing which you guys kept saying was I try to emphasize the importance of voice. And you're saying they have to get out, they have to talk, they have to have real world experiences. Sometimes at the K-12 level, the logistics of that, as well as the budget, isn't possible. So one of the things I try to stress is when you have students explain things with their voice, do a voice reflection, it's like X-ray vision for you as the teacher inside of their brain and thinking about really like seeing what that learning process is and understanding it. So that's one strategy for the K-12 audience out there. So I believe it was David, you mentioned grading and you were talking about how you're actually using AI to help you with this quote unquote grading process. Because, a lot of teachers and professors will tell you that one of the reasons that they don't do more experiential learning or project inquiry based learning is because of the time it takes to review versus doing a multiple choice test. And especially now with technologies, you can have that graded within literal minutes. So I want to dive into that a little bit more and see if anybody has any other thoughts on how or if grading should evolve in this age of AI.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think we still need to evaluate, right? Proficiency matters, but correctness alone isn't a reliable indicator of mastery. It never has been. Instead, I think the evolution is really where we can capture how, like Bhavani said, how did the learner arrive at that final product, right? What were their revisions? What curiosity was reflected? What was their discernment around the answer? Their ability to take thoughtful action, right? If we're going to be teaching, we might begin with a draft that was AI generated, but what matters is the iteration. What did they question? What did they change? What did they reject because it didn't align with their values or they witnessed the inevitable bias, right? So it's that idea of not just grading a static end result, but evaluating that evolution of ideas over time.
For me as an educator, especially because I teach mathematics, AI can help you retrieve the information. With these all new tools coming up, there's so many things. You can take a picture of your handwritten notes and you can ask AI to solve it in your own handwriting. I've created a LinkedIn video on that. But for me, the main important thing is comprehension. AI will help you with retrieval, but comprehension encompasses when students know when this is applicable and when this is not applicable. And curiosity definitely matters in today's world. So when I'm giving you a pre-calculus problem, can you take it beyond the classroom, beyond the textbook? Some of my projects are help me, or you come up with an idea where you can use vectors. And it's fascinating to see when students make those connections. Vectors in music, vectors in coming up with Christmas lights for a house, vectors in hiking. When they make these connections, the information stays longer. And I personally feel they're ready to move on to the workforce because if I ask them not to use AI, I am preparing them for the workforce that does not exist.
Exactly. Proficiency becoming visible through action, not just answers.
Making your knowledge visible. How do I know you know?
X-ray vision, making knowledge visible, X-ray vision into your brain. Yeah. Jeffrey, yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. Let's.
I would have used a different word, but it's spot on. The connections that she's talking about, to me, I would call it application, right? It's like that's a applied AI, right? Put it to the real world. So we all know if a great teacher could lecture and you'd certainly learn something, but then the process of even writing it down makes it stick more, right? Like keeping the notes. And so then you get to this next level, and then, testing somebody on it probably brings them to the next level. But to get to real understanding, it's how do you apply it? Just sitting and learning it in a classroom, that's not applied, right? So it brings it back to that experiential learning where if you can do it on a real application or in some form, I think that helps it internalize and make it stick.
Yeah. So I wanted to just go back to something that Michelle said earlier, that the ethical dilemma is very important. I think one of the important things when we talk about grading, how our current student generations perceive grading has become influenced by the technology itself, right? So they grow up in a lot of digital, social media, gamification. And to a certain extent, what I've seen, one of the effects of that is that they look at grade as an enabler of something else. So, for example, I need to achieve this grade. I need to make 5.0. How is that possible when maximum is 4 nowadays? I need to get SAT score of XYZ so I can get to the best college. And then after that, how do I get the best grade so I can get a good job, etc. and so forth. But in all of that thinking, they may miss the whole point of it. So what I sometimes tell my students is, look, I'm not going to grade hard, okay? But I'm going to test hard. And you need to understand that even the exam process, to me, is not a process to measure and assign them a score. You're not a score. In fact, use this as an opportunity to put you on your feet and to study and to get good at the kind of skills that will make you effective in the workplace. That's more important. And I've experimented a lot over the past 2 years with how can we use AI to promote social learning, how to promote them peer pressuring each other to get better at these skills. And one of the most satisfying results was when I applied some of this testing technique. When I said, don't worry about the grade, but worry about what you're learning, I allowed them to use AI to prepare for the exam. In fact, I gave them the rubric. I gave them the question up front. But I said, when we get to answer it, you'll do it without AI, without notes. And they said, Prof, actually, in the process of answering questions during the exam, I'm actually learning. So the grading, the exam becomes the part of the learning process itself. And when people share with one another, that enhances their learning. So it's just new paradigms that we never imagined possible before. We still have to apply the theory of learning, Bloom's taxonomy. How do we build that into the grading process to understand at what level? Are they just memorizing stuff, or do they understand the connection? Can they apply this to a real world situation? All of that in the hands of a capable teacher who knows how to build AI tools to do that is powerful. But therein lies the challenge, which is most of our teachers have not yet been trained. Most of our in-service teachers were not going through their education when these technologies were already in use.
And if I can just build on that, between what he said and what Bhavani iterated earlier, I think it is vital that we teach AI foundations not only to educators, but also to students, right? Letting them know ahead of time how they're going to be assessed. Learners might begin with an AI-generated draft, but what matters is the iteration. And we're articulating that to them ahead of time, that we're looking at what did they question? What did they change? What did they reject because it didn't align? That idea that we are teaching them this, I think, is vital, because that's a piece that's sorely missing right now. And people are self-taught, right? Whether it be an educator that's like, okay, what is this all about? I'm experimenting with it. Or rather it's a student that's thinking, I might be able to just copy and paste something in. We have to be really explicit in our education if we are going to shift assessment in this way.
I like to add something. I mean, I'm so glad you brought this point up, Michelle and David. My class grade does not tell my students' worth. I could have a student getting an A, student getting a C, and they could still be successful. And letting my students know that this is just a way to prepare you for the world is very important. And since AI is now part of the learning environment, making this visible rather than forbidden. I ask students for documents, how they use AI. What prompts did you try? What have you accepted? What have you rejected? What worked out? For educators, this metacognitive layer is accessible. I can assess what you're thinking. For students, it teaches a responsible AI partnership. This is a very, very, very important skill that they need when they work or when they get into the workforce.
Absolutely. I love this line of conversation that you've taken us down, because this is literally what I do for a living, is professional learning for K-12 educators to help them think about how, for example, do we redesign assessments in the age of AI? And we often think about it and talk about it in a way that just like, poof, it's just so easy to completely redesign your whole course and your whole class. And that's not the case. At a K-12 level, teachers have very little non-instructional time every day. Like, they're lucky to get an hour without students in their classroom in order to think about these things. I'm curious if any of you, both at K-12 higher ed and industry level, how you're handling that, of giving teachers and professors time to sometimes have to redesign their entire course, including the assessment piece.
I can totally echo what you're saying right there, in that I just did a professional development session at a conference around AI. And one, they immediately wondered what program I was affiliated with, because that's the professional development that they've received, right? It's from Magic School or Brisk or Drift or, fill in the blank. And I told them, I'm not affiliated with one of the programs. I'm trying to increase your awareness of generative AI in general. They were absolutely starving for unbiased information. And so I think prioritizing that type of unbiased training that's not connected to a particular program, but is informational in nature by educators who are in the field, by any one of us facilitating those moments through our own shared experience, I think we're going to build a greater understanding, because it's not connected to a particular purchase. It's connected to them being able to engage with it in a way that makes meaning for them.
And I totally agree with what Michelle says, because as an educator, if a third-party tool comes and talks how good your tool is, I might not connect. But if an educator comes and shows me what worked for that educator and what problems that educator is facing, and having a story to the process connects with me more. Just there's no way that I will have funding for all the tools, and tools are just evolving as we speak. For me, it's more about, are you aware what's out there? Do you know what students know? Because our students are TikTok graduates. Trust me, believe it or not, you might be not explaining how AI works, but they're always on the social media, Instagram, TikTok. So they are aware. And it's very fascinating to me how educators want to learn about AI, not to teach students, but to stop them from using AI. That policing concept is not going to work. They have AI embedded, baked in their life everywhere. So for us, if I am not a good student as an educator, what am I teaching my students? If I have that closed mindset, I will transfer that to my students as well. So when I'm open to learn and incorporate these new AI tools to improve my teaching, I should expect the same from my students as well. AI has to be the starting point. Definitely. I will give you credit for using AI, but that should not be your end goal.
Bhavani, I love that you threw out the word policing, because this is a topic of conversation I have at the K-12 level all of the time. Our reaction as humans is to police, right? We're still going to assign an essay. Tell me what you learned in history class. But instead, we're going to try to find tools which have been found to be extremely ineffective to police that and say, oh, no, you used a large language model to write that essay. So my approach has really been focusing on redesigning, rethinking assessments. But again, that requires time, training, lots of training oftentimes. And I believe, Michelle, you really said it. They need educators of K-12, higher ed, wherever they're at, adult ed, they need unbiased information. The tools are great, especially at a K-12 level. We have a lot of compliance that we have to work through, right? So we need compliant tools that are set up to work at that level, but that can't be the only training and professional development that educators receive is from those tools. They need, and one of my big pushes is AI literacy training for educators and helping increase their knowledge about AI literacy or AI in general. I am getting to the point where I won't even do a training or professional development for educators if they don't have that basic AI literacy knowledge, because it makes everything else crumble if they don't have that base level of information. Jeffrey, anything to add from the higher ed level?
I mean, I can echo lots of things that everybody just said. I agree 100% on the foundational learning. I spend the vast majority of my time is training people on fundamentals of AI. That's outside of education too, by the way. Industry, it's our number one workshop that we teach out to companies. People are just educators and non-educators. They're curious. They're scared. They don't know what it can do. You know, the power of it, I call it the art of the possible, you know, showing them what is possible to do with it. But then, there does need to be some policing, by the way. We're just policing it in the wrong way. You don't police it in the classroom with the kids and lock them down. We need to police other things about AI and its output and trustworthiness and other danger. There's loads of things to police. I just think we're policing the wrong things, frankly. And my daughter, she was in the Cincinnati public schools and had one of those crazy policies. No laptops, no cell phones, no AI. I'm saying to myself, you're really setting this girl up for the world, aren't you? It's like you're just setting her up for failure because the world is AI, just as Bhavna said.
Great. So I mentioned that I created an assessment framework for K-12 educators. I call it the assessment puzzle. I'm curious if any of you have seen, experienced, created any assessment frameworks that help teachers do this redesign to reward the human thinking and not the machine mimicry.
Definitely. I think that you need to value exactly what AI cannot necessarily replicate. I think action, presence, adaptability, emotional intelligence, judgment under uncertainty. I think that capacity to create meaning with and for others is absolutely vital. And one of the things that we do at the She Leads AI Academy is we have an AI educator cohort. And this is already our model. We're working with women and we're not prioritizing learning theory. We're looking for women who are ready to take action. Participants are presenting to real audiences. They're handling those unpredictable questions that come from a live in the moment experience. And they're refining their skill set through that collaborative feedback. They lead learning experiences that require that kind of human-centered facilitation moment. So I think it's these in-the-moment realities that really reveal who they are as action takers, as educators. And that can't happen in any way that traditional assessments ever could. I mean, a lot of training videos now are online videos followed by multiple choice test questions. I mean, come on, who thinks that that's actually anything more than just passive learning? Live performance is vital. How do they show up? How do they guide a room? How do they respond to someone that's confused or challenged? Iterative improvement. How do they use feedback loops to revise their approach or polish their delivery? I think that meaningful creation and community contribution, that internship in action, is really what we've prioritized because we want to be taking action in a way that really embraces what's becoming most important for action takers to have in their repertoire.
Well, that, David, anything to add?
The impromptu nature, right? Pop quiz. Students hated pop quiz, but as educators, we know pop quiz is one of the most effective ways to really keep our students alert at all times and be prepared. And so in the context of generative AI, I think that's one of the most powerful way in which we can test. So what I ask students is to actually give me not only their output, but also their prompts. I encourage them to use AI, but I wanted to see how their prompts that will exhibit the level of thinking that they do when they actually answer questions. So at times I would just create a situation, a plan for an impromptu quiz or test in the class. They're all nervous about it, but said, don't worry about it. I'm not going to grade hard, but I'm going to test you and I'm going to teach you how to face this kind of situation. And so I allow them to use AI even in the process, but because of the impromptu nature of this exam, they weren't prepared for it, right? So they have to think, how can they prompt in the best way to generate the right information in the shortest amount of time possible? And so once I get their prompts, and this is more challenging if they're using public LLM. So I started to develop my own, essentially, AI application that students can use. It functions just like ChatGPT or Gemini, but at least it is within my control. So I could look at everything that they've put in there, and I can then develop again, prompt engineering framework in the background to evaluate the level of their thinking and inform them, hey, when you ask it this way, think about it that way. So it is essentially the application of Socratic method, right? So there is a term Socratic AI tutor to the students. So that's one of the ways in which I try to create this situational based assessment for my students.
I love that. If you're listening to that and thinking, oh, I am not techie enough to create my own solution, my own large language model, whatever you've created, David, I do this a lot. I call it assess the chats. And I use a tool called School AI. They have a feature called Spaces, and it's guardrailed. So it's really safe, secure, compliant for that K-12 level, but also great for higher ed and adult learners as well. That does a lot what it sounds like David is saying he has done and created for himself. Bhavani, anything to add? Assessment frameworks?
Absolutely. I teach online. So having that pop quizzes in class, that doesn't work for me. Because how do I control my students? I don't see them. I'm not in touch with them regularly. So for me, the only medium that I communicate is through whatever LMS that I'm using. And I'm constantly demoing if a new tool comes up. It's very important, as educators, we want to learn more about AI. It's equally important to have students, make them aware of what tools they have. If I see Google Nano Banana, and if I show them that this can produce the entire homework for you, I make a video for my students telling them what to check, what not to check. I have GPTs for my students because they love to use GPTs and they don't have the fear of judgment. They can tell they hate math and GPT will still answer. So all of these tools are very, very, very important to me. And I stopped focusing on tests that grade more. I am doing more of presentations. Use AI to come up with a presentation that you will be using your everyday scenarios. You're a grandmother, you're a hiker, you are a plumber. I don't care who you are, but use AI to come up with a product or with a presentation that you're using this particular topic in pre-calculus in your everyday work. AI will help you to get the information, but you are coming up with the presentation, you are creating it. So that cognitive thinking is constantly going on, and that adds an extra layer of information for my students. So heavy on the tests, proctoring tests, giving you quizzes, online class doesn't work. Show me what you know. I want to measure and I want to see how I'm transferring my knowledge, my enthusiasm, my curiosity to you. So checking that curiosity artifacts is very important in online classes.
I was going to jump in, Lindy. I can talk a little bit about, I wouldn't call it a framework, but let me give some tools for educators so that they don't have to feel overwhelmed and saying, okay, now I have to redo everything. Keep what you have and build on it, and just say, if AI is to make us more efficient and better at what we do, we should be able to ask more of our students. And so let's take the new things and bring them to application. So as an example, you said maybe you're not the most technical person, maybe some of our students are not. Well, AI brings that ubiquity to everybody, right? We can become technical. We can build an app. Somebody who doesn't program can build an app pretty easily if it's a basic app, right? And so we can ask them to do things. Hey, build a website, build this application, take this calculus idea and put it into action in some way. And I think that's one way of doing this, assessing, something at a harder, assuming that they're going to use AI to write the essay or to answer the multiple choice or these other things, we can get them to apply it in a different way. Presentation is the other one. Even in an online class, I have my students in groups record presentations, right? And submit those presentations online. So it's just another way of them practicing putting a presentation together. And yes, they can use AI. They all love Gamma now or Beautiful AI, and they create these great presentations, but that doesn't mean they can present it well, right? And so if we could bring that back into K through 12, I don't know how, but maybe presenting earlier on in their school career. And then working in project teams is another one, not individual assessments, but the ability to a project team always falls apart in a semester, right? Why? Because they don't respond to each other, because they don't work together. They don't, they're all on different time scales. Somebody waits till the last minute to jump in. Those are the real world things that they're going to run into on a real world project, right? And so baking those kind of things in helps tools. So I don't call it a framework, but I think those tools would help folks.
I actually love where you're going there, Jeffrey, and I want to build on that because so often I hear from teachers, hey, this is great. I love this strategy, but I need tools in order to make a lot of this happen. Not all of it. You can do a lot of it without technology tools of some sort, but oftentimes we need tools to build custom GPTs, to build apps, etc. I'll share one tool. I already mentioned School AI. I use their Spaces feature a lot at the K-12 level. Another tool that's one of my favorites is called Snorkel, SNOKL, drop the E. And it is like a whiteboarding screencast tool where students can explain their thinking. They can have that voice reflection over the top of it, but they also annotate. So it's really fantastic for math. They can show their thinking and how they're actually completing the project. It's really great for showing things like, show me the photosynthesis process or the water cycle or whatever it is, because they can annotate over the top of it. Anybody else have any tools that you found to be really helpful with this idea of redesigning and rethinking assessments?
Absolutely. I can. Go ahead, David.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Bhavani. But I think that, earlier I know that when I mentioned developing my own AI and people thought, whoa, this is like way out there. No, it's to your point. So 6 months ago, I did not know I was going to be able to do that. Right. And I started from very small, but like Jeffrey mentioned, I think I demonstrate even in the class how I'm going to try some things. And I'm just going to say, hey, I know coding, but I'm not a professional developer, but I will demonstrate to my students that I exhibit my level of curiosity and my courage to fail. And I said, let me try it. So let us do an impromptu quiz right now. Create 10 quizzes, put it in HTML that I can just distribute and people can run on their desktop. And when they click a button, I'll get the answer will be standardized in some kind of, CSV or JSON format, like a standard text format. And AI can easily just take all of that input and grade it on the fly. And when I tried those, I've had failures. It's not always working 100% all the time, but when I do those things, I force myself to learn and I model in the classroom. I said, these tools are different from all of the other tools before. It's generative tools. They're generating stuff. The information flow is not one way, the teacher giving information to you anymore. They have to be given the time to experiment with it. So nowadays, when I organize workshop, normally in the past, I would do kind of 3 hours. First, I'll tell you what, I'll do it, you see, and then we'll do it together. And then the third one is, you do it, I watch, right? And then now I ask for the 4th hour. I said, what? They said, why 4 hours? Because the 4th hour, I'd like them to have the free time to do whatever they want to do with what they just learned, to reflect on what it is. Because these tools are generative tools. People need to be given the time to really experiment and just not have an agenda. We talked earlier about how can teachers have the opportunity to retool. Well, whenever we do these training for the teachers, don't just give information all the time. Give them some free time to actually do that. Like in companies, some of the most innovative companies like 3M have historically given all of their employees up about, I think, 4 hours a week of free time in the week when they just do whatever project that they want to do. That's not, related to any kind of a prescribed project.
We call that genius hour at K-12. It's this idea, they pulled it off of Google 20% time, that you get 20% of your time to explore and do what you want. Bhavani, I think I cut you off there. Go ahead.
Yes, I would love to add, we talk about educators using AI. We talk about students using AI. What's really important is from the educator perspective, when I teach a class, I don't start off with the formulas. I start with the basics. So if educators are not wanting to use AI, please keep in mind that the fear of not knowing what AI is very, very strong. So demystify AI for them. Give them the resources. In my case, I build multiple GPTs for faculty. I teach mathematics, but I have psychology faculty approaching me. I even build a tool for Canvas HTML. You don't have to know HTML. You talk to the tool gives you. I have 2 teenage boys, and they're constantly coming to me, Mom, help me build a GPT to ask me questions. Help me build a GPT for SAT. I show them how to use Google Notebook LM. How do you upload all the PDFs? How do you quiz yourself? How do you increase the difficulty of the quizzes? I mean, these conversations have to start at home, at school, with your students, with your peers, and that interdiscipline collaboration is a must. For a math educator, I'm only thinking, how can you bring this? How can you use AI? But from an English perspective, writing is important. And it's very important to understand that we are not abandoning correctness. We are expanding what counts. And what that expansion benefits students is it's giving them different perspective of education, gives them different or richer value of education. So showing them all these tools, giving them the resources is the first step. And then take it or toss it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I could talk tools all day. I'll just give you my top. It kind of depends on what the topic is. If I'm coding, GitHub Copilot or Cursor. For general things, productivity tools, I mentioned Gamma and Beautiful AI for slide decks. They both do a great job. For learning things, a good one to have in your toolbox. Somebody mentioned it. It might have been Bhavani. Google AI Studio is fantastic. You can share your screen. You teach an application. Like I teach Tableau in my class. And, so I have to spend time in class showing somebody how to use it. Well, now they can just pull up Tableau, share their screen with Google AI Studio and ask a question. And Google AI Studio will tell them how to do things in that program. And so it doesn't even have to be trained. You can just share your screen on Excel or whatever it is. So there's lots of great tools out there. I use all the public LLMs, but Google for the classroom is really easy. And Copilot is another one that's sort of out there for everybody.
Yeah. And I would say half the battle is just feeling like you have a place in the space, right? Allowing people to come in judgment free and just explore some possibilities. And as an AI educator, really trying to make this as welcoming as possible for all points of view right now, I think is vital. Understanding that we need the skeptics to come into the room. We need the people that are thinking, we're just going to ban it. We need them in the room. We need to hear their voices. We need to have these conversations collectively and collaboratively, not so much around a particular tool, but around exploring what's now possible and understanding where we want to look at this and where we want to say, maybe this isn't the best place for it. Really getting that discernment ourselves and allowing people to voice that, I think, is going to be a vital part of moving forward.
Great. Well, it is that time to wrap up. So my final thought, I want to build off of what David said. He said the word modeling. That is huge. If you are a school leader, a district leader, a leader at a higher ed institution, in a leadership position, wherever you are, and you're leading teachers, professors, instructors, you absolutely have to model the use of these technologies and make sure that your training and professional learning is modeling the type of learning and changes that your teachers, instructors, professors need to make. Everybody else, 30 seconds or less, what is your final thought, final piece of advice for our audience? Bhavani, I'm going to start with you because you're first in my screen.
All right. The goal here is to not prohibit AI. That's unsustainable and that's not going to work. So my understanding is to redesign meaningful assessments that AI can assist you with the starting point and not the finish line. When we assess growth, judgment, we are rewarding thinking that machines support you, but machines cannot replace you. And preparing students for the world where this judgment and distinction definitely matters.
David, you're next.
Yeah, so I know that I'm probably kind of the atypical member in this panel where I'm actually more of a professional working, but I teach part-time and I enjoy it. But the reason I do that is because I believe AI is not just a productivity tool that will automate process, etc. But first and foremost, the way AI is going to create, ROI for companies, it's a tool of learning. And AI itself, imagine like you have a tutor that has near infinite amount of information capacity. It can absorb more materials than normal human beings, but it still needs to be taught because it still hallucinates. It's still non-deterministic. So the skills that I acquired to try to teach people, I apply that now to teach and train the AI models or the AI system, so I can then use it as an assistant in accomplishing whatever task I do in a workplace. And I believe, more than anything else, that's how we're actually going to reap the benefit of AI in the workforce. And so that's why I love being in this community with other educators and see how we sharpen our abilities in doing so.
Michelle, final thoughts?
I think that it's absolutely vital that we do the kind of work that we're doing over at She Leads AI. I think working with adult learners, working with aspiring AI educators, I think we're rewarding that human thinking shift, and we're moving the spotlight from correctness to capacity. I think we need to do that capacity to lead, the capacity to interpret, to collaborate, to design, to question. All of these are vital skills that we have to bring to the table. And thinking of assessment in this limited, static, paper, pencil kind of way is the antithesis of that. We need to empower others, and the distinctly human mastery is going to begin.
All right. Last but not least, Jeffrey, final thoughts?
I think we need to look long term about AI and just understand, even today, it may be non-deterministic. That'll solve itself. We'll be doing things that we'll be putting humans out of jobs for sure. It's happening already and it'll only continue. So to prepare our students for the future is those things that we talked about: empathy, decision-making, problem-solving, presentation, collaboration. The human elements are a long ways away, and those are the things that are going to drive the future for those students. That's what's going to be more important than the hard technical skills that we focused on for the last 20 years.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So just to wrap up the thoughts that I heard from this great panel of educators, we need to shift to focus on process over product. We need to focus on the human elements like voice. We need to provide real-world experiential learning to students like apprenticeships, and focus on reflection as well, like doing decision logs and reflection journals. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you for the whole panel. It's been great listening in for the last hour or so. But before we go, I'd like to invite each of you an opportunity for some self-promotion. We'll start with our moderator, Lindy. 15 seconds. So where would you like to send the audience?
Yeah, you can find everything about my work with K-12 educators on my website, lindyhoc.com. So LINDYHOC.com. And if you're interested in my assessment puzzle toolkit and framework, it's pretty extensive. It's 20 pages and it's a free download. So go to lindyhoc.com/assessment-puzzle.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's go to Michelle next. Where would you like to send the audience?
We would love it if you would come over to sheleadsai.ai. Our mission is really to unite accomplished women in moving forward in this generative AI space. So we believe we need more women in more rooms having these conversations. So please come on over to our community and check it out. We would love to have you join us.
Thank you for that. Jeffrey, anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, I don't have anything to sell you. If you want to learn more about AI, we do a lot of training. The University of Cincinnati, we have a graduate certificate in AI. In the fall of next year, we have a master's degree in AI management. And if you're in the corporate or education world and you just want to learn some foundational skills, we do workshops where you can join and learn more about AI, all at the University of Cincinnati and the Applied AI Lab.
Sounds great. Thank you for attending today. David, anything you'd like to quickly plug?
Yeah, so similar. I don't necessarily have any particular service per se or website, but anybody can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just find my unique David Hendra Wirawan name. But I also wanted to invite people. So I sit in the intersection between the industry, the professional, and the higher education. And I am passionate about bringing industry professionals who are willing to do the same, that they wanted to share their wisdom with students because they need it more than ever. So if you would like to speak in my class or speak in one of the DAMA Association meeting or AI Alliance meeting, please feel free to connect with me.
Excellent. Well said. And last but not least, Bhavani.
I'm a passionate educator. I'm not selling anything, but you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel myself, and I love to train educators, corporates, from demystifying AI all the way up to creating an agent. So I'm really passionate about it. It could be something small, something big. Do connect with me. Let's collaborate. Let's make this world AI ready, for our students, for everybody else. That's all I have.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you one and all again for your time today, and thank you for your attention. If you'd like to dive deeper into this topic and learn more about enterprise technology, we encourage you to join our growing community. Join the conversation at insightjam.com. Or you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly podcasts, panel highlights, expert advice, and live programming just like this panel right here. We're over 1 million subscribers strong right now. We'd love for you to join that growing community. And coming up in just a few short minutes, our next expert keynote. Dr. Joe Perez is going to be talking about building bridges to tomorrow, the 6 ethics pillars of AI leadership. You don't want to miss that. But until then, thank you for watching and listening. My name is John. We thank you for joining us.
For video highlights, replays, and more, visit insightjam.com.